Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. The US Senate passes a compromise bill to end the longest government shutdown in American history after weeks of political deadlock. The measure restores funding and delays President Trump's workforce cuts until January, now awaiting approval in the House. A suicide bomber strikes outside a court in Pakistan's capital, killing 12 people and injuring at least 27. The Interior Minister says the attack failed to enter the courthouse and vows all responsible will be brought to justice. While speaking in Bhutan, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has stressed that conspirators behind the Delhi blast will not be spared, even as the motive of the blast remains unknown. He has emphasized that security agencies are working around the clock to find the culprits. A Russian commander says his forces have pushed deep into the Ukrainian city of Kupiansk and seized several train stations. He adds that troops have also taken control of an oil depot on the city's eastern edge. Iraqis head to the polls to elect a new 329-member parliament, with Prime Minister Mohammad al-Sudani seeking a second term. Many voters remain sceptical of change, seeing the election as favouring established parties that control the country's oil wealth. Israel's parliament approves the first stage of a bill backed by Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir to impose the death penalty on Palestinians convicted of killing Israelis. The bill passed its initial vote 39-16, with supporters saying it would deter attacks and prevent future prisoner deals. Iran says it seeks a peaceful nuclear agreement with the United States to end decades of tensions. A senior official insists Tehran will not compromise its national security in any future negotiations. Cristiano Ronaldo says the 2026 World Cup will definitely be his last as he nears the end of his legendary career. The 40-year-old Portuguese star made the announcement via video link at a forum in Saudi Arabia. We start this hour in the Indian capital, where initial investigations into the deadly Delhi car blast in front of the Red Fort indicate the use of ammonium nitrate fuel oil and detonators. As the death toll rises to 12 with 20 injured, a nationwide security alert has now been issued. Authorities have heightened security across airports, metro stations, bus stands, railway stations and border entry points, with thorough vehicle checks being conducted. President Draupadi Murmu, currently in Angola, spoke with Union Home Minister Amit Shah, requesting an update on the situation. Meanwhile, Shah called for another security review meeting at 3 p.m. local time. Security forces are now deployed in key public areas in the city of Delhi as the investigation continues. Okay, now joining us is Major General Sudhir Karji, and he joins us to discuss this ongoing situation, of course, in the Indian capital. We're getting information trickling through now, official information. What stands out to you about the nature of these explosions?
Thomas, good evening. Thank you for getting me for your show. Sometime back on 31st of May, I had written an article. It got published in India Sentinels, in which I had highlighted one issue, that with promotion of General Munir to the honorary rank of Field Marshal, India should be prepared physically, mentally, and in a comprehensive manner to witness some kind of a black swan event. And this particular incident, though has taken place in a premature manner, perhaps to my understanding and reckoning, since I have been joining the dots very, very comprehensively, was actually minuscule of what was estimated in my mind. Perhaps they had a bigger plan in place which could not take off. Maybe the sleuths or the intelligence agencies of India, they proactively busted the very gang which was preparing for the similar kind of a black swan event. And this blast which has taken place, right from the beginning, I had been in multiple channels, have been emphasizing that it is nothing other than a terrorist attack. The investigators would do well when their approach is top down and rather than bottom up. When I said top down, my recommendation was that they should start with conviction that it was a terrorist attack and they must continue to discount point after point from the checklist of the inventory for to be classified as a terrorist attack. Number 2 point we had was that the gang which was busted, that gang incidentally had a group of white collar terror network ecosystem. When I say white collar, what I mean is people who are qualified as doctors were into the terror network, and there were prominent divisions, people looking after indoctrination, radicalization, weapon training, collection of funds, and host of other activities, mobilization of opinion, medical evacuation, medical treatment, likewise. So they have identified people, selected them, put them through the process of radicalization, and they have identified these kind of groups inside the capital as also outside the capital of India. I, for one, I had already suggested way back in 2025, 31st of May, that it possibly could be a multi-city kind of attack which will compel India to go in for a massive retaliation against Pakistan, call it conventional or call it as hybrid kind of operation. And I had actually put it under a heading of uh, entrapment operation. Entrapment operation means India would have no option but to compel to go in for a very extended and prolonged kind of an operation. Now that it has happened, innocent lives have been lost, whether call it as fidaini or suicide attack or otherwise, telltale marks of very prominent signatures of terrorist attack have been established. I have also recommended that the communication must be established because there is somebody across the border in Pakistan who's called as the handler and who has
Okay.
been coordinating this operation. He is an officer of ISI, therein an officer of Military Operation Directorate of Pakistan Army who are controlling and directing this particular operation. So therefore, the involvement of Pakistan must be, without any ambiguity, established, and India must take it up in earnest since our doctrinal change has taken place on 9th of the 10th of May 2025. An act of terror is to be treated as an act of war. The whole nation must come together and put its best foot forward
Okay.
and teach Pakistan a lesson.
Okay. What information so far do we have, official information, that this is linked to Pakistan? Because so far, no official has come forward, of course, giving out this information. How is it? How would you navigate this? Of course, there's going to be a rife amount of disinformation spiraling about this incident. We saw that with Operation Sindoor as well, everything surrounding it. So how does one go around, navigating which information to follow and which not to?
Excellent. I'm glad you have raised the question. That is what I was coming to. You see, the means of detonating a blast or a bomb could be physical or it could be technical. When I say technical, what I mean is a remote control device or a manual device, which in other words is called as improvised explosive device, which is triggered with the help of a codex. There is a igniter there is a detonator, and it triggers the explosion. So it is connected by some kind of a connecting piece of wire. Call it as by any name. I'm calling it as a codex. Codex is further connected by a wire from a power mechanism, which actually, by pressing the power mechanism, the current passes and it goes up to the igniter. Igniter detonates the detonator, and it sets the mechanism into a kind of a explosion. So that can happen manually, or it can happen remotely. Now that needs to be established. To the best of my understanding of the entire situation, that is yet to be established. Why am I saying is, if it has been triggered manually, who's the man who was responsible? Where was the trigger point, the power point? Is there any telltale marks of the power point? And once you home onto this particular power point, a couple of things will stand out. A person who's responsible to operate it manually would be having some means of communication. He would be doing it at somebody's direction. And that direction would further lead to usage of communication equipment. My input suggests that China in the recent past, close to Operation Sindoor, has provided a specific equipment, communication equipment for the Pakistan army, and those equipments further have been handed over to the terrorist organization Jaish and AGH. They used it extensively during Operation Sindoor, and my input suggests they are also being used currently in the Delhi blast. That particular equipment is an encrypted equipment, and it is very difficult to decipher unless our state-of-the-art technology or centers of excellence have managed to decode that particular equipment. It will be very, very difficult to decipher. So once it is deciphered, it will take us, connect us. These are the things which will happen on the job. They're yet to be established, Thomas. My only thing, why am I coming to this conclusion is, in the backdrop of Operation Sindoor,
Okay.
and activities which are taking place inside Pakistan, inside Bangladesh, and along with China in Kunming and elsewhere, these are not conjectures. You just join the date, extrapolate the kind of activities. It will take you to a traditional conclusion that without Pakistan's involvement in this, they couldn't have dared carry out an activity, that too in the capital of India, which has seen dormancy, or rather stability, peace and normalcy for past nearly, I am told, 17 years, but now one of the channels just brought out that since 2011, there has not been any kind of blast taking place in Delhi so far. So therefore, I'm convinced personally that it has to have some kind of a directional role across the border from Pakistan, for which we need to have patience, trust our system. They will definitely investigate, take out the evidence, join the dots, and come to a very, very unambiguous conclusion that here it is, without Pakistan's involvement, this couldn't have happened.
Okay, of course, we have limited information on the case currently. We will, of course, here on NewsX World, once we get any official information, we will bring it straight to you. But now, moving on, we will, of course, come back to that later. Now, a suicide bombing outside a district court building in Pakistan's capital city of Islamabad has killed 12 people and injured 27 others. Pakistan's Interior Minister too has confirmed the death toll and injuries, saying the attack occurred around 12:39 p.m. local time, causing panic among lawyers and litigants in the crowded area. He also added that some of the injured are in critical condition. Meanwhile, authorities are still investigating the nature of the blast, with police unsure whether it was a suicide attack or a car bomb. Police have also set up cordons around the court building, and ambulances have been deployed to the scene. Now let's listen in to some eyewitnesses who were present near the court building at the time of the blast.
35 minutes हो गए हैं, तो हम जो ही गाड़ियाँ पार्क करके अंदर गए हैं, जस्ट मेन गेट से एंटर हुए हैं, तो साथ ही एक ज़ोरदार धमाके की आवाज़ आई है। बहुत बड़ा ब्लास्ट हुआ है, और मुड़ के देखा तो बस आग ही आग थी, और पार्ट्स ऑफ बॉडी थे बिखरे पड़े, डेड बॉडीज़ थी, और शोले आग के बुलंदी पे थे। तो खौफ व रास का मामला था। तो उसके बाद फिर पुलिस आ गई, सिक्योरिटीज़ आ गई, हम साइड पे हो गए, लेकिन बहुत बड़ा ब्लास्ट था। ऐसा लग रहा था कि जैसे लाइक किसी ने बम ब्लास्ट किया हो या बहुत बड़ा धमाका.
Now we move on. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has said he held separate talks with several US officials and his Syrian counterparts during a visit to Washington. The discussions focused on developments in Syria and in Gaza, with Fidan noting that the US understands the need for Syria to remain united. Speaking to local media after the talks, Foreign Minister Fidan revealed that he was also invited to join part of the meeting with US President Donald Trump and Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa, adding he had also met US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Vice President J.D. Vance and US Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Tom Barak. Let's in fact listen in to his statements.
Beyaz Saray'da başta mevkidaşım ve aynı zamanda Milli Güvenlik Danışmanı olan Sayın Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff ve Suriye Özel Temsilcisi, Ankara Büyükelçisi Tom Barak olmak üzere birçok görevli yetkiliyle Beyaz Saray'da görüşmeler yapmak üzere davet edilmiştim. Tabii bugün benim Beyaz Saray'daki varlığım Suriye Cumhurbaşkanı Sayın Ahmet Şara'nın ziyaretiyle aslında bir noktada denk gelmiş oldu. Onlar Sayın Trump ve ekibiyle buluşurlarken görüşmenin bir yerinde bizi de davet ettiler. Ben de orada yer aldım.
Later, Fidan also met separately with Shara and Syrian Foreign Minister Assad al-Shibani. Okay, now joining us once again is Major General G. Of course, Turkey-Syria relations, a very interesting topic. Turkey says the US understands Syria's fragile situation. What does that tell us about US and Turkey coordination in the region, in the new Syria?
Thomas, excellent question, I must say, because we know what is happening in Israel against the Hamas, and there is a stabilization committee which is under formation, and I would say overwhelming involvement of Turkey at the behest of Donald Trump. So Turkey, in any case, is expected to play a very important role to the critical issues towards Israel and Hamas. One is not very confident whether Hamas will disarm or not, and what means and methods are being adopted. But suffice to say, Turkey is playing a very important role. Now, with regard to the statement which has been made, which you alluded to, my take on the entire issue is that everyone knows that what the situation in Syria is. Everyone knows the present leadership in Syria once upon a time was heading a terrorist organization. There was a bounty on his head. Everyone also knows that there is a gradual process of the non-state actors in the world, whether in Afghanistan or in Syria or in Bangladesh, legitimization of the non-state actors has started becoming a new normal in 21st century. And everyone also knows as to why US is present in Syria. It is virtually aiming to harness maximum oil, the fossil fuel from Syria, which is cheap and of high-grade quality. Everyone also knows how fragile the peace and stability in Syria is. But the center of it is dominated by Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK. Now, PKK is the main militant group operating in Turkey, Syria, and northern Iraq. And we should not forget that the KPP, in some form or the other, is being sided with by United States of America, which is the primary, I would say, predominant rival of Turkey, operating partly Turkey, southeast Turkey, partly towards the north of Iraq, towards southeast of Syria, northeast of Syria, and that particular belt. So since there is an inherent and traditional contradiction, rivalry between Turkey and Kurdish, who happen to have a major role inside Syria itself, there is a very, I would say, discrete indication of speculation in the statement of the leadership of Turkey. Second point that I wish to highlight is that Turkey, being a member of the NATO, is also clearly indicating to USA that please handle the Syrian leadership with care, because it is very, very fragile, and anything that happens in Syria is going to have a spillover impact in Turkey. Turkey being a NATO member, any attack on Turkey would mean that it is an attack against all the NATO members. USA has to play a very important role and involving role in preventing from that particular event taking place against NATO. And third and last point is that no matter what the intention may be, the Middle East is so troubled now, with one incident taking place anyway, will have an interconnected spiraling impact which has got the potential to directly or indirectly affect adversely the improvement that is taking place, or the move forward that is taking place as far as the 20-point peace proposal is concerned, which has been mooted by none other than Donald Trump. How it will manifest, in what adverse manner, the time will say. But suffice to say that there are dangers lurking in anything and everything that happens. One has to be mindful and be careful when you are dealing with the leadership of Syria, and particularly by countries like a superpower as USA.
Yes, Major General G, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to have you. We now move over to West Asia, and Iraqi officials have cast their ballots in the country's parliamentary elections held at a crucial moment for Iraq and the wider region. Minister of Communications Hiyam al-Yassari emphasised the importance of voting. Let's take a listen in.
التفرج والمقاطعة هذا ما يغير شيء، لأنه بالنهاية دستورنا باقي ونظامنا البرلماني باقي، والنظام البرلماني يقول أنه لا يمكن التغيير ومحاربة الفساد إلا من خلال صناديق الاقتراع. اللي قاطع غير هو قصده يحارب الفساد، فشلون يحارب الفساد وهو جالس في البيت؟ لازم يطلع يختار له واحد نزيه حتى يساعد هذا النزيه أنه هو يحارب الفساد.
However, voter turnout has been reported as low in some major cities, with many Iraqis expressing delusionment with the political system. Despite this, citizens across the country, from Baghdad to Mosul, are hopeful for progress. Let's take a listen in to some people from Iraq.
الفرصة 4 سنوات، يعني ما معلوم ميتين طيبين بعد الأربع اللي يعني احنا الآن نأسس لأحفادنا ولأولادنا هذا الشيء، يعني لازم نغير الوجوه، ما ظل مستمرة نفس الوجوه.
As Iraq heads to the polls with over 7,700 candidates standing, the results could determine the future of the country's delicate political balance and its relations with both Iran and the United States. Preliminary results are expected within 24 hours after polls close later today. Okay, now joining us is Dr. Ronan Zidel, an Iraq analyst for the Moshe Dayan Center. He joins us live from Tel Aviv University. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to get your input on this. Dr. Zidel, Iraq's parliamentary elections come at this time of fatigue with corruption and stability. Do Iraqis have any hope for political change at this time?
And the turnout, as you said, is very low. It could be all-time low. The record was 4 years ago with 43% of participation. I wouldn't be surprised if this record would be broken in this election, because there's apathy, there's fatigue, there's hopelessness also all over the country, from the south to the north. So that affects the turnout, which is very low, as I said. People don't feel that they have an impact on the political process because Iraqi elections are on two tires. First, they elect the coalitions or parties for seats in the parliament. And then, because there will be no victor, there will be no winner in the elections, then the most prominent politicians would sit down and decide who will be the next prime minister. And on this, the Iraqis have no impact at all. So they feel that it's beyond their capacity to have any impact on the political process. And they also feel that there are some other external actors who are more influential than the Iraqi voter, for example, Iran. So that's why they prefer to stay at home or even boycott.
Yeah, and what are at the forefront of Iraqis' mind going into this election, and what challenges, of course, do they face to achieving it?
First, well, of course, there's the constant issues of infrastructure, electricity, water, and so on and so forth. There's the issue of corruption, which always figures out. But these are the traditional issues, and nobody expects anything to change dramatically. The hottest issue on the agenda is the future of the militias and their disarming or not. Possibly they wouldn't disarm, they don't want to disarm, but the Americans put pressures on them to disarm, the Iranians put pressure on them not to disarm. So, and again, the Iraqi citizen, the Iraqi voter has no impact on this subject, even though most of them would like the militias to vanish, to disarm.
Dr. Sidel, thank you very much. Do stay with us. We will, of course, here bring you all the results coming out of that election going on in Iraq as soon as we get them. Now, in Estonia, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has vowed that Israel will not be deterred by Iranian attempts to target its diplomatic missions worldwide. Speaking in Tallinn at the opening of Israel's new embassy, Saar addressed Iran's recent plot to assassinate the Israeli ambassador to Mexico, stating that Tehran regularly targets Israeli embassies and diplomats. He reaffirmed Israel's commitment to strengthening global ties, saying that they will continue to expand their relations, particularly with friendly nations like Estonia. This embassy marks the third new mission Saar has opened since taking office, following Moldova and Zambia. The minister expressed that the embassy opening is a symbol of Israel's growing political, economic and cultural connections with Estonia. Okay, of course, another embassy for Israel, this time opening in the Estonian capital of Tallinn. Of course, this is a big development as Israel faces international criticism, but also grows ties with countries that Gideon Saar said it is friendly with. Okay, we now move on. Malaysian authorities have recovered more bodies in the ongoing search for missing Rohingya after a boat carrying members of the persecuted Myanmar Muslim minority sank near the Malaysia-Thailand border last week. At least 27 people have been confirmed dead, with 9 additional bodies found, including 1 in Thailand. The boat, which was reportedly carrying 70 passengers, capsized, and the fate of another vessel believed to be carrying around 230 people remains unclear. Search efforts in the Andaman Sea continue, and Amnesty International's Myanmar researcher Joe Freeman said hopelessness is driving many Rohingya to risk perilous boat trips in search of a better life. Let's take a listen in.
Rohingya that I've spoken with over the past year or so is there's a general sense of hopelessness. There's a hopelessness about going back to Myanmar, where they have to live either under the Myanmar military or the Arakan army, which they do not feel will respect their human rights. And there's a hopelessness about the situation in Bangladesh, where it's becoming just harder to live because of these aid cuts, and because, frankly, the Bangladesh government does not make any room really for Rohingya to work, to get an education, to move around. So they're kind of increasingly suffocated within these camps.
Well, that is all that we have time for. Keep watching News X12 for more international updates.